Well, joining us now for more on this situation is Raymond James, Washington policy analyst and managing director, Ed Mills. Ed, it is great to have you on the show. And maybe, Ed, just start here with your reaction, Ed, to Special Counsel Robert Hur's report and also Biden's presser last night. What did you make of it?
So, Josh, I do think that this is going to be a close election. And, we will be looking back probably in hindsight to make a determination. How much did this event, how much did other events this week, we've had a number of things related to President Trump, ultimately influence the election. But what I've been focused on here at Raymond James is kind of what was Rick talking about, some of the outcomes here. And there are huge policy decisions which will have major market reactions, taxes, regulation, geopolitical events. So when I get questions at Raymond James, yes, we are debating about how much this impacts the election. Is President Biden and former President Trump on the ballot come November? There seems to be a nagging sense that there's some unknown things that could happen this year that could have an outsized impact. But I don't think I can really predict that. So I'm focused on, if there is a Republican president, what are those policies? If there's a Democratic president, what are those policies? Because even as we shift out some of these players, there's not as big of a change as I would necessarily expect, given where kind of the makeup of Congress could be, especially.
Right. That is a great point. It's not just about the president, right? It's about Congress as well. And as we see right now, Congress is not getting anything done because they can't come to agreement, Ed. So how do you sort of put all of that together and figure out what the different outcomes are going to look like in terms of economic and trade policy come, after the election?
Yeah, Julie. So I'd start with before the election, we still have not yet figured out how we are going to fund the government after the end of this month. But what we have been telling folks at Raymond James is that when you look at what they've agreed on, where the dollar amount's going to end up, we are debating a defense supplemental in the Senate that could add another $95 billion of fiscal spend here. There's an $80 billion tax bill that seems like there's an opportunity to get that done in the Senate. It's already overwhelmingly passed the House. So when you're adding these things up, at the beginning of the year, lots of questions about whether or not there was going to be a fiscal drag. But now we're going to see kind of further fiscal support. After the election, the biggest issue really comes down to we're coming into the debt limit. We're coming into the expiration of the tax cuts that passed under President Trump in 2017. There's an expectation that if it's an all-Republican government, those get extended out. Much more nuanced conversation if President Biden or there's a divided Congress in that debate there.
And just getting back to Biden here for a second, I do want your opinion on this. Given what we heard yesterday, what we saw, you had Special Counsel Robert Hur saying that listen, Biden could not remember when he was vice president of the United States. Are you fielding questions from your clients about whether Biden even remains in this race or whether he steps aside? Are they asking you that? And in response, what are you telling them?
So, Josh, that's been one of the biggest questions. There's a sense that, this election is going to be a repeat of 2020, and that might be inevitable. But in D.C., things are impossible right up until they are inevitable. And so, yes, throughout this whole process, last year, a lot of it was it's not going to be Trump as the nominee, and now it's kind of overwhelmingly a sense that it's going to be him. There is a awful lot of questions from clients on whether or not it's going to be Biden. The answer is no one knows. When he said last night was that he feels he's the most qualified person for this position. He sounded like someone that was adamant about getting the nomination. We look at the votes. There has been a challenge by Dean Phillips in New Hampshire, kind of write-in won overwhelmingly for Joe Biden. In South Carolina, Dean Phillips barely broke 4 digits, and Biden had a 90+% poll. So it's like there's these questions that are coming in, but when we look at the votes, the voters have not yet showed us there is a strong desire for an alternative candidate, or at least something that they have an option on a ballot as of right now.
Ed, I don't envy you your job a lot of the time, but this year is uniquely challenging. So thank you so much for sharing your insight with us.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, as you try to game it out. At least you can figure out maybe policy-wise what each of the candidates would do. Thanks so much, Ed. Appreciate it.
Thank you, because that's the most important.